The end of the world doesn't sound like a bang. It doesn't sound like a siren or a scream, at least not at first. The end of the world sounds like the sudden absence of a hum you never realized was there. It is the compressor in your refrigerator shuddering to a halt. It is the cessation of the electric buzz in the power lines overhead. It is the silence of the HVAC system dying, leaving you in a stillness so profound you can hear the blood rushing through your carotid artery. That is the sound of the grid failing, and with it, the artificial womb that has kept you alive, comfortable, and spectacularly soft for your entire existence is torn away. You are standing in your kitchen looking at the stainless steel appliances that you spent 3 months financing, and you are realizing that they are no longer conveniences. They are now just geometrically pleasing scrap metal. The first instinct of the average suburbanite, which is exactly what you are despite your collection of tactical morale patches, is to panic, and then to execute a plan based entirely on Hollywood movies and fantasies of heroism. You think you are going to board up the windows. You think you are going to rack a shotgun slide and shout warnings. You think you are going to hunker down in a fortress. This is the delusion that will get you killed within the first 72 hours. Let's talk about why your plan is suicide, and how the laws of physics, specifically optics and thermodynamics, are conspiring to turn your 3-bedroom, 2-bath investment into a tomb. The first thing you're going to do, because you are frightened and you want to feel like you're doing something, is run to the garage and grab that stack of plywood you've been saving. You're going to hammer sheets of wood over your windows. You think this signals strength. You think this says, "Stay away, I am prepared." Let me tell you what that actually signals to the desperate packs roaming the streets 3 days after the trucks stop running. It signals that there is something inside worth protecting. Plywood on a window in a neighborhood of glass is a visual beacon. It creates a contrast ratio that the human eye, evolved over millions of years to detect anomalies in the landscape, picks up instantly. You have just put a neon sign on your house that says, "I have food, I have water, and I am terrified." Furthermore, let's discuss the ballistics of plywood. Standard half-inch plywood offers absolutely zero ballistic protection against anything moving faster than a thrown rock. A 556 NATO round, traveling at roughly 3,000 feet per second, will pass through that plywood as if it were wet tissue paper. The bullet doesn't even deform. It creates a temporary cavity in the wood fibers, passes through the glass behind it, and enters your living room with enough kinetic energy to shatter your sternum. You haven't built a shield. You have built a blindfold. You can't see them coming, but they know exactly where you are. Now imagine the sun goes down on the 4th day. The power is gone. The streetlights are dead. The ambient light pollution from the city is gone, plunging your subdivision into a darkness deeper than you have ever experienced. You decide to light a candle or click on a tactical flashlight because you need to see. This is where the physics of light transmission betrays you. Light behaves as both a wave and a particle, and photons are persistent little bastards. Even a small crack in your blackout preparations, a gap of mere millimeters between the curtain and the frame, allows photons to escape. In a true blackout environment, the human eye switches from photopic vision, which uses cones for color and detail, to scotopic vision, which uses rods. Rod cells are incredibly sensitive to low light levels. A single candle, unshielded, generates about 1 candela of luminous intensity. In total darkness, the human eye can detect a candle flame from 30 miles away if the curvature of the earth didn't get in the way. In your neighborhood, that sliver of light escaping your window cuts through the darkness like a laser beam. It tells the starving, violent observers outside exactly which room you are in. It tells them you are awake. It tells them you have resources. You have just invited the apex predators of this new world to come and dine. The horror of this failure is not immediate death. It is the terror of the siege. You will hear them testing the doors. You will hear the glass breaking in the room you aren't in. You will realize that by trying to make your home a castle, you have turned it into a prison. The Molotov cocktail they throw isn't high-tech. It is gasoline in a rag. When it hits your siding, the thermodynamics of combustion take over. Vinyl siding has an ignition temperature of roughly 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Gasoline burns at nearly 5,000 degrees. Your siding melts, dripping liquid fire down the structure, exposing the wood frame beneath. The convection currents suck the fire up into the eaves into the attic, and suddenly the roof is burning above your head. You are flushed out, coughing, eyes stinging from the hydrochloric acid gas released by the burning vinyl, right into the arms of the people waiting outside. This is the reality of your fortress. So how do we fix this for under $100? We stop trying to fortify and start trying to disappear. The goal is not to be bulletproof. The goal is to be invisible. We are looking for light discipline and camouflage. Go to the hardware store, or loot it if we're being honest about the timeline, and get heavy-duty contractor trash bags, the thick ones, 3 mil or higher, and duct tape. This is your bunker material. You aren't boarding up the windows on the outside, you are sealing them from the inside. But you don't just tape the bag to the glass. This is where the physics comes in. You need to create an air gap. You tape the black plastic to the window frame, sealing every single millimeter of the edge so no photons can escape. Then you place a second layer over the first, creating a dead airspace. This does two things. First, it ensures absolute light occlusion. Second, that air gap acts as a thermal insulator. Glass is a terrible insulator. It has a high U value, meaning it transfers heat rapidly. If you are hiding in the winter, you will freeze. If you are hiding in the summer, you will roast. The air gap slows that thermal transfer, keeping your body heat in or the solar radiation out. From the outside, your house looks dark, abandoned, and dead. It looks like every other looted shell on the block. There is no plywood to signal value. There is no light leaking out to signal life. You are a ghost in a graveyard. Now let's talk about water, because the delusion you have about your bathtub is going to give you dysentery. The moment the grid goes down, the common advice is to fill the bathtub. "Quick, honey, plug the drain," you scream. So you fill your tub with 50 gallons of municipal water. You feel smart. You feel prepared. Here's the biological reality of what you have just done. Your bathtub is a petri dish. Even if you scrubbed it, there are microabrasions in the porcelain or fiberglass that harbor biofilm, colonies of bacteria that have built a protective matrix of polymers to shield themselves from your cleaning products. You introduce water, and within 24 hours, the chlorine, which is a volatile gas dissolved in the liquid, off-gases and dissipates. The water is no longer sterile. Now enter the bacteria. Exponential growth is a concept humans are terrible at understanding. We think linearly. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3. Bacteria multiply geometrically. 1 bacterium divides into 2 every 20 minutes. In 12 hours, 1 single organism becomes nearly 70 billion. If your water has even a trace of E. coli or Legionella, and the temperature in your house rises because the AC is dead, you are cultivating a biological weapon in your bathroom. But the physics of the water system is even more terrifying. When the power fails at the pumping station, the pressure in the municipal mains drops to 0. But it doesn't just stop there. It creates a vacuum. If there is a break in the line anywhere downhill from you, or if the fire department opens a hydrant to fight the fires that will inevitably start, the pressure becomes negative. This is called back siphonage or backflow. The water in the pipes doesn't just sit there, it gets sucked backward. And what gets sucked in to replace it? Groundwater. Sewage from leaking septic lines, industrial runoff. The water in your pipes, which you think is safe, is suddenly mixing with the effluent of the entire collapsing city. You turn on the tap to fill your canteen, and you're drinking a cocktail of cryptosporidium and giardia. Let's talk about cryptosporidium. It is a protozoan parasite with a thick outer shell that makes it resistant to chemical disinfection. It laughs at your bleach. Once you ingest it, it exists in your small intestine and burrows into the epithelial lining. It causes secretory diarrhea so violent that you can lose liters of fluid a day. In a survival situation where rehydration is difficult, this is a death sentence. You die of dehydration while sitting next to a tub full of water. The horror is the smell. The horror is the weakness. You are lying on the floor, too weak to lift your head, your bowels turning to water, realizing that the very thing you thought would save you is liquefying your organs. Your family watches you wither, helpless because they drank it too. The solution requires understanding fluid dynamics and storage. Forget the bathtub. If you want to hide water, you need to use the volume that already exists but is sealed, your water heater. It is a 40 or 50 gallon tank of pressurized, potable water that is already inside your home, protected from light, which promotes algae growth, and sealed against contaminants. But you can't just open the tap. Without pressure from the street, the water won't come out the top. You need to understand gravity and atmospheric pressure. You have to open the relief valve at the top of the tank to let air in, breaking the vacuum, and then drain the water from the spigot at the bottom. This water is likely the cleanest you'll have access to. To store more, under that $100 budget, you don't buy fancy jerry cans. You buy box wine liners or heavy-duty food-grade bags, fill them before the pressure drops, and hide them inside things that don't look like storage. Fill a bag and put it inside a hollowed-out couch cushion. Fill a bag and put it inside the wall cavity behind a removable vent. We are hiding the water because when the raiders come in, and they will come in, they will look in the kitchen. They will look in the bathroom. They won't look inside the upholstery of your recliner. Let's move on to the delusion of defense and the acoustics of suburbia. You have this fantasy of the shootout. You think you will take up a position at the top of the stairs and hold off the horde. This assumes the horde cares about its own survival. It also assumes you understand how sound works in a modern house. And drywall is nothing but gypsum sandwiched between paper. It has a sound transmission class, STC rating of about 33. This is pathetic. It blocks almost nothing. If you're having a conversation in the master bedroom, someone standing in the living room can hear the cadence of your voice. Now amplify that. You rack a shotgun slide. That ch-ch-ch sound is distinctive. It occupies a specific frequency range that cuts through background noise. It is a mechanical sound in an organic world. By doing that, you have given away your position, your weapon type, and your state of readiness. You have lost the element of surprise, which is the only advantage you have as a defender. Furthermore, let's talk about the physics of auditory exclusion. Under high stress, when your cortisol levels spike and your heart rate hits 170 beats per minute, your brain shuts down non-essential processing to focus on the threat. You literally go deaf to peripheral sounds. You develop tunnel vision. You will not hear the second attacker coming up the back stairs. You will not hear the glass breaking in the basement. You will be hyper-focused on the front door while the threat flanks you. The horror of this scenario is the realization that you are not the hunter. You are the prey in a trap you built yourself. You are waiting for a frontal assault while they are pouring gasoline into your basement window. You are waiting for a target to appear in your sights while they are simply smoking you out. The solution is silent defense and early warning systems that rely on tension, not technology. We go back to physics. Tension and friction. Fishing line, monofilament. It is nearly invisible, strong, and has zero stretch. You run it across the perimeter of your yard, not at ankle height where they expect it, but at shin height or chest height, but we don't attach it to a bell. Bells are cliche and tell the intruder they've been spotted. We attach it to debris. A stack of empty tin cans poised precariously on a shelf in the garage. A pile of broken glass created from your own picture frames, scattered under the windows inside the blackout curtains. Why broken glass? Because the sound of crunching glass is primal. It triggers a distinct psychological response. It implies pain. It implies sharpness. And physically, walking on glass creates an unstable surface, forcing the intruder to look down, breaking their Oyota loop, observe, orient, decide, act. In that split second where they look down to see what is cutting their boots, you have the advantage. You fight from the shadows, using silence as a weapon. You don't fire warning shots. Warning shots waste ammunition and give away your location. You engage only when you can guarantee a neutralization, and you do it from a position of deep cover within the house, shooting through the murder holes you cut into the drywall, choosing the studs as cover. Now let's address the thermodynamic nightmare of cooking. You have a stockpile of rice and beans. Good for you. You have enough calories to survive for 6 months. But have you considered the chemistry of smell? Smell is particulate. When you smell bacon, you're inhaling particles of pig fat. When you cook rice, you are releasing steam, carrying volatile organic compounds into the air. In a starving world, the smell of cooking food is a beacon stronger than light. The olfactory bulb in the human brain is directly connected to the amygdala and the hippocampus, the centers for emotion and memory. The scent of food will trigger an aggressive primal hunger response in anyone nearby. If you boil water to cook pasta, that steam expands. It carries the scent molecules through the cracks you missed, out the chimney, out the vents. You're broadcasting a dinner invitation to people who haven't eaten in a week. The horror is sitting down to your hot meal, feeling a moment of comfort, and then hearing the front door shatter because someone smelled the cumin in your chili 3 houses away. They will kill you for that bowl of chili. They won't even hesitate. The caloric deficit they are experiencing has overridden their frontal cortex. They are running on pure reptilian instinct. The solution is to change the chemistry of how you eat. You do not cook, not in the traditional sense. You use cold soaking. You take your rice, your beans, your dehydrated meals, and you put them in a sealed jar with water. You let physics and time do the work. Osmosis will rehydrate the food. It will take hours instead of minutes. It will be cold. It will be mushy. The texture will be repulsive, but it will be caloric energy without the release of volatile aromatic compounds. You eat it cold, in the dark, in the center of your house. You accept the misery of the cold mush because the alternative is the heat of a burning house. Finally, consider the psychology of your invisible bunker. You are fighting the concept of entropy. Entropy states that all systems tend toward disorder. Your house, your body, your mind, they all want to break down. The suburban home is designed to fight entropy with constant energy input, electricity, gas, water pressure. When those inputs stop, the house begins to die. The wood dries and cracks, the pipes freeze and burst, the mold begins to grow in the stagnant air. You must become the active force against this entropy, but you must do it without being seen. This requires a shift in mindset from consumer to maintainer. You are no longer living in a home. You are operating a life support system. Every calorie you burn must be calculated. Every drop of water you drink must be accounted for. You are not a survivalist. You are a biological machine trying to maintain homeostasis in an environment that has become hostile to human life. The $100 budget isn't about being cheap. It's about being resourceful. It's about realizing that the objects around you have latent functions. A mattress is not for sleeping, it is soundproofing. A rug is not for decoration, it is thermal insulation. A mirror is not for vanity. It is a tactical tool to see around corners without exposing your head. The true invisible bunker is not a place you build. It is a way you behave. It is the discipline to sit in the dark for 12 hours without making a sound. It is the discipline to defecate in a bucket lined with a bag and cover it with kitty litter or dirt to stifle the bacteria and the smell, rather than flushing a toilet that doesn't work. It is the discipline to accept that the world you knew is dead, and the house you live in is merely a shell to keep the rain off your head while you survive the collapse of civilization. Let's look at the thermal signature of the human body. You're a biological radiator emitting roughly 100 watts of thermal energy at rest. In a cold house, you are a heat source. If someone outside has a thermal imager, and they are becoming common from hunting gear to iPhone attachments, you glow. Plywood doesn't hide this heat well. But do you know what does? Mylar. Those cheap emergency blankets. They reflect 90% of radiated body heat, but you don't wear them. You line your inner nest with them. You pick one room, preferably an interior room with no windows, like a large closet or a hallway. You build a fort inside that room using mattresses and blankets, and you line the inside of that fort with Mylar. This reflects your body heat back to you, keeping you warm without a fire, and it masks your thermal signature from the outside world. You're containing your infrared emission. You are scrubbing your signature from the electromagnetic spectrum. Consider the trash. You're consuming canned goods. You're generating waste. If you put a bag of trash on the curb, or even in your backyard, you're leaving sign. Sign is a tracking term. It indicates presence. A pile of empty soup cans says, "Someone here is eating." It also tells them what you are eating. It gives them an inventory. You cannot throw anything away. You must wash your trash, scrub the cans so they don't smell, and store them inside. You are living with your waste. This is the unglamorous reality. Your bunker will shrink. You will lose the living room. You will lose the kitchen. You will retreat deeper and deeper into the core of the house as the perimeter becomes unsafe. You will end up in a 10 by 10 space, surrounded by bags of your own waste, eating cold, rehydrated bean paste, listening to the screams of your neighbors who didn't listen to this advice. But you will be alive. And that is the only metric that matters. The collapse of society isn't just a logistical problem, it is a biological and neurological siege. You think you can handle the quiet. You think you can handle a cut on your finger? You are wrong. You are relying on a medical infrastructure that no longer exists and a social feedback loop that has been severed. Let's dissect the two things that will kill you faster than a bullet: the microscopic invasions of your bloodstream and the disintegration of your own mind. Let's start with the delusion of the minor injury. In your previous life, a blister from breaking in new boots or a slice on your thumb from opening a can of peaches was a nuisance. You slapped a bandage on it and forgot about it. You had a functioning immune system bolstered by a sterile environment, good nutrition, and the latent protection of a vaccinated herd. Now look at your hands. They are dirty. The water is limited. Your nutrition is crashing, meaning your protein intake is insufficient to repair tissue effectively. That cut on your thumb is no longer a cut. It is a breach in your fortress walls. The skin is the body's primary defense against the billions of pathogens swarming on every surface. When you slice it open, you invite the world in. Imagine it is day 12. You scratch your leg on a rusty piece of that useless plywood you tried to put up. It's a shallow scratch. You ignore it. But let's look at the microbiology of Clostridium tetani. These bacteria are obligate anaerobes. They hate oxygen. They live in soil, dust, and manure. When they enter that deep scratch, specifically if the wound closes over or is covered by a dirty bandage, they find a low oxygen environment. They begin to germinate. As they grow, they release a neurotoxin called tetanospasmin. This molecule travels via your motor neurons, moving retrograde, backwards up the nerve fibers, toward your spinal cord. It blocks the release of inhibitory neurotransmitters. Normally, when your brain tells a muscle to contract, another signal tells the opposing muscle to relax. Tetanospasmin turns off the relax signal. The horror begins with lockjaw, but that is a quaint term for the reality. Your masseter muscles spasm so hard your teeth can crack, but it doesn't stop there. The toxin moves down. Your back muscles, which are incredibly powerful, begin to spasm simultaneously. This is called opstatenos. Your body arches backward with such force that you can fracture your own vertebrae. You are fully conscious while this happens. You are trapped in a body that is tearing itself apart. There is no ventilator to breathe for you when your diaphragm seizes. There is no diazepam to relax the muscles. You die from asphyxiation, crushed by your own strength, drowning in your own saliva in the dark corner of your safe house. And that's just tetanus. Let's talk about Staphylococcus aureus, specifically the strains that live harmlessly on your skin right now. Without showers, without hygiene, the colony counts explode. That minor scratch becomes a boil. The boil becomes an abscess. The abscess becomes cellulitis. The bacteria release enzymes like hyaluronidase, which breaks down the connective tissue, the cement holding your cells together, allowing the infection to spread rapidly through the fascial planes. You get a fever. Your metabolic rate spikes, burning through your precious calorie reserves. You become delirious. You enter septic shock. Your blood pressure plummets as your blood vessels dilate in a systemic inflammatory response. Your organs, kidneys first, then liver, shut down due to hypoperfusion. You die shivering and burning up simultaneously, killed by an organism, one adapted to your nose and one was twice the width of a hair because you didn't have a tube of antibiotic ointment or the water to wash a scratch. The solution? Radical, brutal hygiene. You must treat every scratch like a gunshot wound. If you have alcohol, you use it, even though it damages tissue because the alternative is sepsis. You use superglue, cyanoacrylate, to seal clean wounds immediately, creating an artificial scab that bacteria cannot penetrate. You boil your bandages. You do not touch wounds with dirty hands. You become a germaphobe in a world of filth. Now let's pivot to the enemy inside your skull. The delusion is that you are an introvert, that you like being alone, that you can handle the silence. You are confusing solitude with isolation. Solitude is a choice. Isolation is a sentence. Humans are obligate social animals. We evolved in tribes. Our brains require social feedback to regulate emotional states. When you remove that feedback, the brain begins to eat itself. This is the neuroscience of sensory deprivation and social isolation. By week 3, the silence of the suburbs is heavy. It has a physical weight. The reticular activating system, SOCRS, in your brainstem, which filters incoming stimuli, starts to malfunction. It is desperate for input. When it doesn't get it, it starts to amplify internal noise. You start hearing the blood rushing in your ears. You start hearing the house settling, but then the brain starts to create input. This is the beginning of the hallucinations. It starts with auditory pareidolia, your brain interpreting random noise as patterns. The wind outside sounds like a whisper. The creak of a floorboard sounds like a footstep. You are constantly spiking cortisol, constantly in fight or flight mode. Then comes the third man factor, or the feeling of a presence. You will feel with absolute certainty that someone is standing behind you. You will turn around, and no one is there. This isn't a ghost. It's a misfiring of your temporoparietal junction, the part of the brain that processes your sense of self and your location in space. Your brain is losing the boundary between you and the room. You start talking to yourself, not just muttering, but having full conversations. This is a defense mechanism. Your Broca's area, speech production, and Wernicke's area, speech comprehension, are trying to simulate a social loop to keep your neural pathways from atrophy. The horror is the paranoia. Without a tribe to validate reality, your internal narrative becomes the only reality. You see a neighbor across the street. Are they looking for food, or are they the devil? Your amygdala, the fear center, grows larger and more reactive. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and emotional regulation, shrinks. You lose the ability to distinguish between a threat and a shadow. You are sitting in your mylar-lined closets, clutching a hammer, convinced that the silence itself is a conspiracy. You stop sleeping because you are afraid of the dreams. Sleep deprivation accelerates the psychosis. You become dangerous not just to intruders, but to yourself. You might dismantle your water filter because you think it's listening to you. You might open the door and scream just to break the silence, giving away your position and ending your life. The solution to this psychological decay is rigorous, structured routine and artificial socialization. You cannot just exist. You must have a schedule. Joe 800. Check water seals. Euro 900. Physical exercise. Calisthenics to burn cortisol. 1,000. Inventory. You must treat survival like a job. The structure keeps the prefrontal cortex engaged, and you must document. Write a journal. Talk to it. Create a fictional audience. It sounds insane, but creating a Wilson, like in Cast Away, is a valid psychological survival strategy. You project a persona onto an inanimate object, a bust, a picture, a wall, and you interact with it. What do you think, Bob? Should we open the beans today? This forces your brain to simulate a theory of mind for another being, keeping those critical neural pathways firing. You preserve your sanity by fracturing it just enough to create a companion. You stay invisible to the outside world, but you must remain loud within your own mind, or the silence will hollow you out long before the starvation kills you. Now we need to talk about the delusion of nutrition. You think you have enough food because you went to Costco and bought 20 kilograms of rice and 10 kilograms of beans. You did the math. You calculated calories. 2,000 calories per day times 90 days equals 180,000 calories. You have 200,000 calories of dry goods stacked in your pantry. You feel smart. You feel prepared. But you don't understand the difference between calories and nutrition, and this ignorance is going to cripple you before you starve. Calories are just a unit of energy. They measure how much heat is released when you burn food, but your body is not a furnace. It's a chemical factory requiring specific raw materials to function. Rice and beans together provide a complete protein profile, all 9 essential amino acids, which is good. But where is your vitamin C? Where is your vitamin A? Where are your essential fatty acids? Let's talk about scurvy, because it is coming back with a vengeance in the collapse, and it is more horrific than you imagine. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, is required for the synthesis of collagen. Collagen is the structural protein that holds your body together. It is in your skin, your blood vessels, your tendons, your gums. Without vitamin C, your body cannot produce hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine, the modified amino acids that give collagen its strength. After about 30 days of zero vitamin C intake, your existing collagen begins to break down faster than your body can replace it. The first sign is bleeding gums. You wake up and your pillow is stained with blood because your gums have started to dissolve. Your teeth, no longer anchored by healthy tissue, become loose. Then the petechiae appear, tiny red dots on your skin where capillaries have burst. Then the ecchymosis, massive bruising from the slightest touch because your blood vessels are literally falling apart. Old wounds reopen because the scar tissue, which is pure collagen, disintegrates. The horror is internal. You start bleeding into your joints. Your knees swell to the size of grapefruits filled with blood. You cannot walk. You are lying in your mylar fort, immobilized, as your own circulatory system leaks into your tissues. You develop hemopericardium, bleeding into the sac around your heart, and you die from cardiac tamponade when the pressure squeezes your heart until it cannot beat. All of this happens because you didn't eat an orange. The solution under the $100 budget is to grow microgreens. You don't need a garden, you don't need sunlight attracting attention. You need seeds, broccoli, radish, sunflower, and shallow trays. You can germinate seeds in the dark using a process called sprouting. You soak the seeds for 12 hours, drain them, and rinse them twice a day. In 5 to 7 days, you have sprouts packed with vitamin C, vitamin K, and folate. You grow them in a closet. You grow them in a drawer. They are invisible. They are silent. They are the difference between scurvy and survival. But there is another deficiency that will destroy you even faster. Electrolytes. You think water is water. It is not. Pure water is just H2O. When you sweat, when you urinate, when you have diarrhea from the stress and the bad water you inevitably drink, you are losing sodium, potassium, magnesium, and chloride. These ions are critical for nerve conduction and muscle contraction. Your heart is a muscle. It beats because of the sodium-potassium pump, a protein in every cardiac cell that moves sodium out and potassium in, creating an electrical gradient. If your electrolytes crash, this pump fails. Imagine day 25. You have been rationing water. You are dehydrated. You finally find a cache of bottled water and you drink 2 liters in 10 minutes. But your sodium is already dangerously low. You have just diluted your blood even further. This is hyponatremia. Your neurons swell because water rushes into the cells to balance the osmotic pressure. You get a headache, then confusion, then seizures. Then you slip into a coma as your brain herniates through the base of your skull. You die from drinking water. The solution is to make oral rehydration salts. The World Health Organization formula is simple. 1 liter of clean water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt. The sugar provides glucose, which helps the intestines absorb the sodium via the SGLT1 transporter. This is biochemistry saving your life. But where do you get salt when the stores are looted? You collect it. If you live near the coast, you boil seawater until only the salt remains. If you are inland, you scrape the white crust from the inside of old terracotta pots. Those are mineral salts that leached from the clay. You lick the salt from your own skin after you sweat. You become an alchemist, extracting life from the mundane. Now let's address the nightmare of waste management and the exponential horror of disease vectors. You are defecating into a bucket. Let's talk about what is in that bucket. Human feces is not just waste. It is a biological weapon. A single gram of feces contains 10 million viruses, 1 million bacteria, 1,000 parasite cysts, and 100 parasite eggs. If you mishandle this, if you spill it, if you step in it and track it across your safe room, you have just seeded your bunker with pathogens. The bacteria in feces are facultative anaerobes. They can survive with or without oxygen. Salmonella, Shigella, Campylobacter, and enterotoxigenic E. coli are all present. They cause gastroenteritis. You get severe diarrhea, which dehydrates you, which makes you drink more water, which is contaminated because you didn't seal the bucket properly and flies landed on the rim and then landed on your water container. Flies are mechanical vectors. They don't transmit disease through bites. They transmit it by landing on filth and then landing on your food. A single housefly can carry over 1 million bacteria on its body and in its gut. The horror is the fly cycle. Flies lay eggs on feces. The eggs hatch into larvae and into maggots in 12 hours. The maggots feed and grow. In 5 to 7 days, they pew out and emerge as adult flies. One female fly lays 500 eggs in her lifetime. If you do not control your waste, you will have a fly infestation in 2 weeks. The buzzing will drive you insane. The smell will give away your position, and the disease load will overwhelm your compromised immune system. The solution is the bucket toilet system, but done correctly. You line the bucket with a heavy-duty trash bag. After each use, you cover the waste with a desiccant. Cat litter works, but it is heavy. Sawdust is better. It absorbs moisture and suffocates fly eggs by creating an anoxic environment. Wood ash is best. Ash is alkaline with a pH around 10. Most pathogens cannot survive in high pH. Ash also absorbs ammonia, controlling the smell. You seal the bag tightly every single time. You store the sealed bags in a secondary container, away from your living space, in a room you have sacrificed. You are living with your shit, but you are controlling it. You are preventing the biological cascade that turns your bunker into a plague pit. Let's pivot to the existential horror of time dilation and isolation. You think you can track the days. You make little marks on the wall like a prisoner. But here's the neuroscience of a temporal perception. Your brain measures time using the density of memories. A day filled with novel experiences feels long when you live it, but short in retrospect. A day of monotony feels short when you live it, but stretches into an eternity in memory. In your bunker, every day is identical. You wake in the dark. You eat cold mush. You sit in silence. You sleep. There are no markers, no events to anchor memory. After a month, you lose track. Was that day 30 or day 35? You check your marks and realize you forgot to make one yesterday. Or was it 2 days ago? Time becomes elastic, unreliable. This is dissociative amnesia brought on by chronic stress and lack of stimulation. Your hippocampus, which encodes episodic memory, is being damaged by sustained high cortisol. You start to forget why you were hiding. You forget the faces of the people you are trying to survive for. You experience depersonalization. You look at your own hands and they don't feel like yours. The horror is the day you decide it doesn't matter. You stand up. You walk to the door. You unlock it. You step outside into the daylight, unarmed, uncaring, and you are immediately seen. The apathy of profound depression has turned you suicidal without you even realizing it. You have given up not because you wanted to, but because your brain chemistry has been so thoroughly disrupted that the survival instinct has been overridden. The solution is to create artificial temporal landmarks. You must ritualize the meaningless. Every 7 days you do something different. You reorganize your supplies. You write a letter to a person who might be dead. You perform a maintenance day, where you inspect every seal, every corner. You create micro goals. Today I will inventory every can and write down the expiration dates. This forces your brain to encode a distinct memory. You are fighting neurological entropy with sheer willpower and structure. Finally, let's discuss the physics of sound and the fatal mistake of believing you are alone. You think because you cannot hear anyone, no one is there. But sound is a pressure wave. It attenuates with distance following the inverse square law. If a person is whispering 50 meters away, the sound intensity reaching your ear might be below the threshold of perception, roughly 0 decibels sound pressure level. But they are there. They are watching. They are listening. Humans are persistent hunters. We are not the fastest or the strongest, but we are the best at tracking over time. If you make a mistake once, if you cough, if you drop something, they will mark your location and return. They will wait for you to make another mistake. They will pattern your behavior. He moves at night. He uses the back door. And one night, they will be waiting. The solution is variable routine and deception. You never use the same door twice in a row. You create false trails. Open a window you never use. Leave footprints leading away from your actual entry point. You use the paranoia productively. You assume you are always being watched and you act accordingly. The invisible bunker is not a place. It is a discipline. It is the discipline to live like a ghost in your own home, to erase yourself from the pattern of the world, to become so quiet, so still, so insignificant that you are forgotten. And in the collapse, being forgotten is the only way to survive. Let's talk about the delusion of the sealed tomb. You have taped up your windows. You have taped up your vents. You have created your mylar-lined nest in the closet to hide your thermal signature. You feel secure. You think you have shut the world out. Congratulations. You have just constructed a gas chamber. You're about to learn about hypercapnia and the physics of respiration in a closed system. The average human exhales roughly 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide every single day. In a normal house, the stack effect and drafty construction exchange the air volume naturally. But you, clever paranoid you, have used duct tape and heavy plastic to stop that exchange because you are afraid of radiation or viruses or tear gas. Now you are lying in a closet that is maybe 4 cubic meters in volume. You are breathing. You are converting oxygen, O2, into carbon dioxide, CO2. CO2 is heavier than oxygen. It sinks. It pools on the floor where you are sleeping. As the concentration rises from the normal 0.04% to 1%, you won't notice much. Maybe you feel drowsy. This is the insidious nature of the gas. It is odorless and colorless. But as it hits 3% or 4%, the chemistry of your blood changes. CO2 dissolves in your blood plasma to form carbonic acid. Your blood pH drops. This is respiratory acidosis. Your body tries to compensate. Your respiratory drive is triggered not by a lack of oxygen, but by the buildup of acid. You start to hyperventilate. You wake up gasping, your heart pounding, sweat pouring off you. You think it's a panic attack. You think it's the fear. It is not. It is your own metabolic waste poisoning you. The horror is the confusion. Acidosis scrambles the brain. You cannot think clearly. You try to stand up, but you are dizzy. You try to open the door, but your motor coordination is gone. You pass out again, falling back into the invisible pool of gas on the floor. But you never wake up. You suffocated in a room full of air because you didn't understand partial pressure. The solution requires discipline and math. You must burp your bunker. You cannot stay sealed forever. You need to create a ventilation schedule based on the volume of your safe room. Every 4 hours, you must open the seal near the floor to let the heavy CO2 out, and near the ceiling to let fresh air in. You do this slowly. You do this silently. You treat air exchange like a tactical reload. You're swapping spent air for live air. And you sleep on a raised platform, a cot, a pile of clothes, never on the floor. You stay above the gas line. Now consider the delusion of pest control. You think you are the only one who wants your rice and beans. You think because you've locked the doors, nothing can get in. You are wrong. You have built a warm, food-rich environment in a cold, dying world. You have rung the dinner bell for the Rattus norvegicus, the Norway rat. Let's look at the biology of the rat. It has a collapsible rib cage. If a rat can fit its skull through a hole, about the size of a quarter, it can fit its entire body through. It can chew through wood, plastic, lead pipes, and even cinder block given enough time. Its incisors never stop growing. They are harder than iron on the Mohs scale. You stored your food in the original cardboard boxes, or maybe in those plastic totes. To a rat, that is not armor, that is wrapping paper. The invasion happens while you sleep. They are silent. They have specialized pads on their feet to dampen sound. They find your stash. They don't just eat it, they urinate on it. They defecate on it. Rodents are vectors for hantavirus, leptospirosis, and lymphocytic choriomeningitis. Let's focus on hantavirus. It is transmitted through aerosolized urine and droppings. You open your pantry. You see a bag of rice has been chewed open. You are angry. You grab the bag to throw it out. A cloud of dust rises from the disturbed droppings. You inhale. The virus enters your lungs. It attacks the endothelial cells in your pulmonary capillaries. Your immune system panics and floods your lungs with fluid to kill the virus. This is hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. You literally drown in your own plasma. The mortality rate is nearly 40%. There is no cure. You die coughing up pink froth, all because you underestimated a rodent. The horror is the realization that your supplies are gone or ruined. You reach for a calorie bar in the dark, bite into it, and taste fur and ammonia. The psychological break that follows, the revulsion, the hopelessness, is often the final straw. You're sharing your bunker with a civilization that is better at surviving than you are. The solution is metal and glass. You do not store food in plastic. You store it in galvanized steel trash cans with tight-fitting lids. You store it in glass jars. You suspend food from the ceiling using wire. Not rope, which they can climb. You create a sky pantry. And you deploy traps immediately, not poison. Poison kills the rat in your walls, where it decomposes and stinks, giving away your position with the smell of death. You use snap traps. You chain the traps to the wall so a wounded rat can't drag them away. You check them every day. You handle the bodies with gloves and bleach. You're fighting a war on the two fronts, the humans outside and the vermin inside. Finally, let's dismantle the delusion of fire. It is January. The temperature in your unheated house has dropped to freezing. You are shivering. Hypothermia is setting in. Your brain says, I need fire. You look at the fireplace. You look at the propane heater. You think, just for an hour. Thermodynamics and optics are about to kill you. A fire in the fireplace sends a plume of smoke up the chimney. In a clear, cold sky, that smoke is visible for miles. It smells of wood smoke, a scent that carries for incredible distances. But even worse is the light. If you light a fire, the light flickers. It bounces off the walls. It leaks through the microscopic gaps in your window tape. A flickering light is a movement magnet for the human eye. But let's say you are smart. You use a propane heater. No smoke, no light, just heat. Now we return to chemistry. Propane combustion produces carbon monoxide, CO. CO has an affinity for hemoglobin that is 200 times higher than oxygen. It binds to your red blood cells and refuses to let go, creating carboxyhemoglobin. It effectively turns your blood into sludge that cannot carry oxygen. The horror of CO poisoning is that it is painless. It is euphoric. You feel warm. You feel sleepy. Your skin turns a cherry red color, not pale blue, because the carboxyhemoglobin is bright red. You look healthy as you die. You simply drift off to sleep thinking, finally I'm warm. And you never wake up. Your family dies with you, all looking peaceful, all preserved like wax figures in the cold. The solution is the microclimate. You do not heat the house. You do not even heat the room. You heat the person. You set up a camping tent inside your safe room. If you don't have a tent, you build one with blankets and cushions. You crawl inside. The volume of air inside the tent is small. Your body heat, 100 watts of energy, is trapped in that small volume. The temperature inside the tent will rise 10 to 15 degrees higher than the room. You wear a wool hat. You wear layers. You sleep in a puppy pile with your family to share conductive heat. You accept the cold of the house to preserve the warmth of the life. You survive by shrinking your world until it is just the space between your skin and the blanket. Every comfort you try to reclaim from the old world, light, heat, cooked food, is a trap. The old world was built on the consumption of massive energy. The new world is built on the conservation of it. You must become endothermic. You must become a lizard. You must become invisible. The moment you try to live like a human from the 21st century, you die. You survive by becoming something primal and something that lives in the dark, waits, and endures. Let's talk about the delusion of the sick room. You have a child, or a spouse, or an elderly parent. They wake up one morning with a cough, just a dry, hacking cough. In the old world, you gave them Robitussin and sent them to bed. In this world, that cough is the bell tolling for your entire bunker. You think you can nurture them. You think you can play nurse. You think love conquers pathogens. Here's the virology of a confined space. When someone coughs, they expel an aerosol plume containing thousands of microdroplets. In a stagnant, unventilated safe room, which we have established you are living in to avoid detection, these droplets do not disperse. They hang in the air, suspended by Brownian motion, for hours. You are breathing their exhaust. If it is influenza A, measles, or tuberculosis, the R naught, ours is our zero value, the basic reproduction number, spikes in a closed environment. Measles has an R0 of about 12 derived in 18 in a normal population. In a 10-10 bunker, it is effectively 100%. Everyone gets it. But let's look at the thermodynamics of a fever. A fever is the body's attempt to cook a virus to death. It raises the core temperature to 103°. This creates a massive caloric demand. For every degree Celsius the temperature rises, the metabolic rate increases by about 12%. Your sick family member is now burning your limited food supply faster than you are, while simultaneously shedding virus. And because they are febrile, they are sweating. They are losing water and electrolytes at an accelerated rate. They are a resource black hole. The horror is the choice. It is day 45. Your spouse is delirious. They are coughing blood. The sound of their hacking is loud, loud enough to penetrate the drywall, loud enough to be heard by the scavengers outside. You're holding a pillow, you're looking at the door, you're doing the calculus of survival. If I put them outside, they die. If I keep them inside, we all die. The bond of love is tested against the physics of contagion, and usually physics wins. You watch them drown in their own fluids, knowing that the very air you are breathing is seeding your lungs with the same death. The solution is the quarantine within the quarantine. You cannot wait for symptoms. By the time they have a fever, they have been shedding virus for days. You need a preventative protocol. No sharing of utensils, no kissing, no hugging. You sleep head to toe to maximize the distance between respiratory zones. But if someone gets sick, you need a hot zone. You use a plastic sheet from your vapor barrier supplies to partition a corner of the room. You create a negative pressure environment if possible, cracking a window inside that zone so air flows from the clean room into the sick room and out to the window, never the reverse. You wear a mask, not the cheap surgical one, but the N95 you saved. You designate one person as the caregiver. The others do not enter. You treat your own blood like a biohazard. It is cold. It is cruel. But it is the only way to stop the chain reaction. Now let's dismantle the delusion of the tactical reload. You have a gun. Maybe a Glock. Maybe an AR-15. You have 500 rounds of ammunition. You think you are John Wick. You fantasize about the firefight. You visualize reloading under pressure, dropping the mag, slapping a new one in. Let's talk about the physiology of fine motor skills under adrenaline. When your sympathetic nervous system dumps epinephrine into your bloodstream, your body prepares for gross motor movement, running, punching, stabbing. Blood is shunted away from your extremities to your major muscle groups. Your hands turn into flippers. You lose the ability to perform as complex mechanical tasks. Fumbling with a magazine release button, trying to align a magazine with a mag well, in the dark, with your heart rate at 180, you will fail. You will drop the magazine. You will jam the gun. And let's talk about the acoustics of a gunfight indoors. A 5.56 millimeters round generates about 165 decibels of sound pressure. The threshold for permanent hearing damage is 140 dBi. In a hallway, the sound wave doesn't dissipate. It reflects. It bounces off the walls, compounding the pressure. If you fire that weapon without ear protection, you will instantly rupture your tympanic membranes. You will be deafened. You will lose your equilibrium because the inner ear controls balance. You will be disoriented, stumbling, unable to hear the enemy flanking you. You have just flashbanged yourself. The horror is the aftermath of the victory. You shot the intruder. He is dead in your hallway. Now what? You have a corpse. A 180-pound bag of decomposing meat. Rigor mortis sets in within hours, then putrefaction. The bacteria in his gut, Clostridium perfringens, begin to produce gas. He bloats. The smell of death is not just unpleasant. It is a chemical signal that travels for miles. It attracts dogs. It attracts other humans. You cannot bury him. The ground is frozen or you are too weak. You cannot burn him. The smoke will kill you. You are trapped in your house with a rotting body that is leaking fluids into your floorboards. The solution is avoidance and traps, as we discussed. But if you must use force, you use standoff weapons that don't rely on fine motor skills or deafening explosions. You use a spear. Yes, a spear. A knife taped to a broom handle. It sounds primitive because it is. It allows you to strike from behind cover, keeps distance between you and the threat, and is silent. It never jams. It never runs out of ammo. If you must use a firearm, you do not reload. You carry a second gun. The New York reload, dropping a gun and grabbing another, is a gross motor skill. It works when your hands are shaking, and you prioritize ear protection, electronic muffs that amplify quiet sounds, footsteps, but clip loud sounds, gunshots, are more valuable than the gun itself. Finally, consider the delusion of the exit strategy. You think, if it gets too bad, I'll bug out. I'll go to the woods. Let's look at the ecology of the woods. You and 10 million other people have the same idea. The game population, deer, rabbits, squirrels, will be decimated within 30 days. This is the tragedy of the commons on a biological scale. But the real killer is the caloric math of foraging. To hunt a deer, you burn calories. Tracking, stalking, dragging the carcass, butchering. If you burn 3,000 calories to catch a rabbit that provides 500 calories, you are starving to death while eating. This is rabbit starvation, protein poisoning. Without fat, your body cannot process the protein. You digest your own muscles, and the woods are not empty. They are the kill zone. The people who already live there, the rural survivalists, the farmers, they have been waiting for you. They know the terrain. They have set the sight lines. You are not a refugee to them. You are a locust. You walking into their tree line is an act of aggression. The horror is the realization that your suburban prison was the safest place on earth. You are crouching under a wet tarp in the woods, freezing, starving, watching the sun go down, realizing there is no plan B. The house was the lifeboat. You stepped off the lifeboat into the ocean. The solution is to bug in until the die-off is complete. The first 90 days will see the highest mortality rate. Violence, disease, starvation, exposure. You do not leave the house. You do not look for greener pastures. You wait for the population density to drop. You wait until the chaos burns itself out. You endure the smell, the darkness, the fear. You become the stone in the river. You let the water rush over you, eroding everything else until you are the only thing left. Survival is not an adventure. It is a siege of the mind, body, and soul. And the only way to win is to refuse to play the game the way the world expects you to. The timeline has shifted. We are no longer talking about weeks, we are talking about months. The first wave of chaos, the fires, the riots, the initial die-off, has passed. The smoke has cleared, revealing a world that is gray, silent, and empty. You are still alive in your mylar-lined closet. You have survived the acute phase. Now, you face the chronic phase, the long quiet. This is where the final delusion kills you. The delusion is the rebuild. You think that because the shooting has stopped, you can start planting a garden in the backyard. You think you can organize a neighborhood watch. You think, we can start over. You believe in the indomitable human spirit. Let me explain the thermodynamics of a collapsed civilization. A complex society is a high-energy system. It requires massive inputs to maintain order. Without those inputs, the system doesn't just stop. It devolves to a lower energy state. This isn't Mad Max. It's the Dark Ages, but with microplastics and super-resistant bacteria. The people who are left aren't the good ones. They aren't the community builders. They are the apex predators. They are the ones who are willing to do things you are still afraid to whisper about. They are the ones who killed for a can of peaches. If you step out now to rebuild, you are simply fattening yourself up for them. You are announcing that you have surplus energy. You are a resource node in a resource-starved network. Let's talk about the biology of long-term malnutrition. Even with your sprouts, even with your hidden water, you have changed. Your body has cannibalized its own muscle mass. Your heart has shrunk, literally cardiac atrophy. Your blood volume has decreased. You're not the person you were. You are frail. If you try to swing a hammer to build a fence, you might tear a rotator cuff that will never heal. If you try to dig a latrine, you might get a hernia that will strangulate your bowel and kill you in agony. You are operating a machine, your body, that is running at 30% capacity. You cannot afford the caloric expenditure of hope. The horror is the day you meet another survivor. You see them on the street. They look like you. Gaunt, dirty, hollow-eyed. You feel a surge of joy. Another human, you think. I'm not alone. You wave. You step out. And in that split second you see the look in their eyes. It isn't relief. It's calculation. They are looking at your boots. They are looking at the flesh on your bones. They aren't seeing a friend, they are seeing a loot drop. The betrayal happens instantly. A rock, a knife, a sudden desperate violence born of total empathy collapse. You die not fighting a warlord, but being bludgeoned by a terrified accountant who needs your coat. The horror is realizing that humanity didn't survive. Only the hunger did. The solution is the gray man, eternal. You do not rebuild. You scavenge. You adapt to the ruins. You become nocturnal. You sleep during the day when the light is dangerous, and you move at night when the shadows are your friends. You do not plant rows of corn. You plant guerrilla gardens of Jerusalem artichokes and dandelions, plants that look like weeds to the uneducated eye but provide starch and vitamins. You do not wear tactical gear. You wear rags that match the color of the concrete. You smear ash on your face to break up the symmetry of your features. You stop looking for the old world. You stop waiting for the power to come back on. The grid is gone. The satellites have deorbited. The internet is a memory. You accept that invisible isn't just a tactic for the first month. It is your species' new survival strategy. You're a scavenger mammal in the age of dinosaurs. Look at your house one last time. It is no longer a suburban home. The drywall's torn open. The furniture is burned. The floors are stained. It is a cave. And you are the caveman. This is not a tragedy. This is evolution. The weak, the loud, the optimistic, the unprepared have been filtered out. You are left. You have spent under $100 as you bought trash bags, duct tape, bleach, and seeds. You didn't buy a bunker. You built a mindset. You understood the physics of light, the biology of bacteria, the chemistry of water, and the psychology of fear. You stripped away the illusions of civilization and embraced the cold, hard math of survival. The sun sets on the ruined subdivision. The wind howls through the broken windows of your neighbors' houses. It whistles through the empty rib cages in the master bedrooms next door. But in your house, there is silence. There is a faint warmth. There is a heartbeat. You are invisible. You are alive. And in this new world, that is the only victory there is.